an old envelope, a dusty handwritten letter inside. I read it, and who is it from? But my deceased father, who left behind instructions and an estate, though nothing else, for me to complete his grand experiment, his grandest aspirations. Macabre though it may be, howdy and welcome back. It's back to my normal voice. I'm Mike, this is Board Games for One, and today we are looking at my father's work. The designer, T.C. Petty III. This is from Renegade Studios. I want to tell you all about how it plays, the pros, the cons. This is a 2 to 4 player game. It plays in 3 to 4 hours. The goal of the game is to have the most points. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. It's a competitive game with some cooperative components as you work around in a village. What you're trying to do the entire game is to gain points mainly by completing experiments and upgrading your estate. You're able to complete experiments by collecting the beautiful resources that come with the game. There's also the super cool Your Father's Major Experiment that you want to complete by the end of the game for some major points. It takes place for a total of, if I can do my math right, total of 9 rounds. So it happens in 3 generations, and there are 3 rounds to each generation. So the way it works is in generation 1, you are the son of the father who is deceased, starting out on his work. And the rounds are your early life, your midlife, and then later in life. Then you die. You die at the end of that generation. And you do not leave everything to your children. No, you are only able to leave the upgrades to your estate, as well as the knowledge that you have gathered, and 1 completed experiment. Then the new generation starts fresh. No money, no resources. You start generation 2. They do the same thing. And then you get to generation 3. And at the end of generation 3, you score for points. When you first decide to play, you're going to decide what scenario you want to play through. There are 3 scenarios that come with the game. You've got Time of War, which is the one that I have left that we have not done. We've got the Cost of Disease, where a pandemic spreads across the land. And then this one, Fear of the Unknown, was fantastic. That's more like Salem witch trials. There is some paranoia for no good reason among the townsfolk. Inside each scenario are items, secret items in the box that you will be asked to pull out at different times in the game. You will not see all the items, as every playthrough is going to be different based on the choices you make, which brings us to, this is an app-based game. So you play the game on the board, however the narrative is controlled by the app. So one player has to have that downloaded on their phone, and as you start every round, you will click a button on the app as you start every generation, and there are certain story moments that will happen where you'll be instructed to check the app, and you will click a button. You may have to make choices. Sometimes those are public knowledge. Sometimes a character privately is to take the app, make a choice, and not tell anybody what they've chosen. Choices affect things like the growth of the town. Though the growth of your estate is purely by your own purchases, the town is this super cool book here that, when you make choices, might upgrade the town, right? You might get more technology and you go up to like a university or something, or you might actually send them into the Dark Ages and you end up in some very sad place with no libraries or knowledge or anything of the sort. Pretty cool. So how do you play? Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's largely a worker placement game. You have a number of workers that you start every round and generation with. You're able to gain additional workers by hiring them. However, you also lose workers by doing things that are just too creepy and too strange by trying to complete your experiments. So they run away, they get lost, they get sent to a lost spot on the board, but don't worry, you can find them again. Your workers all have different abilities to a degree. So you have yourself, who is of course number 1, fantastic, can do everything. If you place them on a space to take an action, they get to take 2 actions. If there's a monetary cost because there's another player there, normally you'd have to pay a fee. You don't have to pay that when you use yourself. Your spouse is pretty hilarious because your spouse works exactly the same as a servant. That's right. However, there are some special effects that happen during story moments, but otherwise they're basically a servant, which brings us to our servants. Your servants are able to go anywhere out in the town. They're also allowed to take actions on the spaces in your estate, but it kind of creeps them out a little bit, so they just might get lost if you use them to gather that knowledge that's a little strange and perform those experiments that probably shouldn't be performed. Then, of course, you have the people that you don't let go outside. That's right, they're just a little bit odd. So they stay within the estate to take actions. They are not allowed out into the real world. That would be me. I would be one of the caretakers, and I'm okay with it. I accept this. Which would you be? Put it in the comments. Are you the numero uno, or are you the spouse, the servant? Same thing. Or are you the caretaker? It's a great time to stop. If you are enjoying the content on this channel, if you're enjoying this review, please give me a like to let me know that you like it. Makes me feel good. And subscribe also so that you can come back for more. What are some actions that you can take? Well, you can do things like, you've got experiments, and at the beginning of each round, you will draw a certain number of experiments, A, B, or C. The higher the letter, the more difficult. There are also some D's in there, but they're secret, and they may or may not get revealed in your game based on the choices that you make. But anyway, you're going to have some experiments. You may want to take an action to complete that experiment. So you would place a worker that's able to do that. So I'm going to pretend I have a caretaker. I'm going to have them do an experiment. Well, to do the experiment, you need to make sure that you meet all the requirements. So that means that you're going to need the resources there. In this case, we need a dead body. Where are you going to get a dead body? Well, you're going to place a worker in the cemetery in the town to get a dead body. But here's what's fun. When you do creepy things like that, the townspeople notice. Every character has their own individual creepy token. So you might be super creepy, but your friends are not. However, the mob token is shared by everybody. Creepy marker. It goes up. Also, the town mobs that just wander around and are highly gullible and not super bright, the mob token would get too close. If your creepiness meets the mob, then you are no longer able to move around in the town because you are too creepy, and there's people with pitchforks and flames and things. And chickens, I don't know what they chase you with, but they chase you around. However, here's what's really fun. I know I'm going off track, but that's all right. You're getting an idea of the game. You could always, when you're super creepy, the one place you can go is the church, because that makes sense. And there you can convince people that you are not super creepy. And the creepy goes down. But again, this affects everybody. So if one person keeps robbing from the graveyard, everybody's going to pay for it. So you may want to keep trying to keep that creepy down and be like, I'm sorry that that family over there keeps stealing those bodies. I'm not a part of this. You can also calm the mob down so their marker can go back up, but it can never go up past the threshold that's determined by whatever scenario you picked and whatever choices you have made. So sometimes this could be like way down here and it gets really difficult. But there are all kinds of different things you can do in the town based on how your town is built. You start out with a pretty basic town that might have a library where you're able to gain knowledge, or a blacksmith to gain materials. You collect resources. You can hire people. This will change as you make choices in the narrative story app. Then you have the actions on your estate board. We looked at performing an experiment before I went on my little tangent because that part just excites me so much. You can see why I love this game. This is dripping with theme. Anyway, oh my goodness. So you complete your experiment. Yay! You completed your experiment. It's going to have a reward. So I would discard that body so we could do the small mammal vivisection. It's very sad. And then I would gain the reward, in this case, of 2 biology knowledge. So there are 4 knowledge tracks. And I'm not going to remember them right now. There's biology, chemistry, there is something called engineering, and then there's wild or forbidden knowledge. Actually, the game calls it occult knowledge. If you're comfortable with that, that's fine. I'm not comfortable with that, and there's really nothing in the game that, other than calling it that specifies it. So to me, it's just wild or forbidden, or you probably shouldn't do it. Knowledge, all right, comes with a consequence. Anyway, you can gain these little knowledge cubes. It's fantastic. And then you can spend those knowledge cubes to do things or to advance in the knowledge track. Why do you want to advance in the knowledge track? You want to do that because you can gain permanent benefits that you can gain immediately, or sometimes at the beginning of every round, or the beginning of each generation. Also, your knowledge cubes, they go away at the end of a generation. They're lost forever, but your knowledge in your journal is not. So moving that up is great. Helps you with points at the end of the game. The other requirement of experiments is there are A, B, C level. They have different requirements. A level, you just need the resources, nothing more. B level, and it's marked on the board, you need to have the resources on the experiment. There you go. You also need to have completed an A experiment. Okay. C experiments are more difficult. So you need to have the resources on the C, plus, what does it say? You need 2 B experiments completed in order to complete a C. And then a D is even more complicated. What do you need? You need 3 C's to complete a D when you get to that. Then, of course, you have requirements on your grand masterwork. In this case, it would be teleportation. I would need an A, 2 B's, and 3 C's before I could complete this. Remember, you lose all your experiments except for one that you choose to store at the end of every generation. Also, oh my goodness, other than that, you can always do estate affairs, which lets you draw more experiments. You get to draw like 3 and keep 1, or you get to generate a little bit of money. You're better to generate money otherwise, but hey, it's there. Also, you can record knowledge. We already covered that. You just discard the cubes. But you have each one of these is one action. So on your turn, what do? You take one action. Then it goes to the next person. They take one action. But here's the cool thing. If you want to gain more than one benefit per action, just place more than one person. So I could send 2 servants to the park to get 2 potions. Because who doesn't go to the park to get a potion? That's not shady at all. That's the game. It makes sense. All right. Anyway, you send 2 there, you get 2 potions. Great. You can't do that in the estate. You can only send, you can send more than 1 worker if it's needed to complete, but you only gain the benefit 1 time. So estate versus this. This is almost a complete how to play. But you can also upgrade the estate with these fun little upgrade tiles. Generation 1 and 2 tiles have good benefits. Once you get to Generation 3, a whole new set of tiles comes out with great benefits to help you score at the end of the game. However, there's something else to note, and that is insanity and obligations. When you do experiments, if you use that forbidden knowledge, then you start to go insane, and you go up your little insanity track here with your little insanity token. You have to draw negative or positive bonuses. So negative bonuses might be getting an obligation, which is something that you must complete before the end of the round or the end of the generation. It's a compulsion before the end of the generation. If you complete that compulsion, you get victory points for it, right? So it might, like this one is, must conduct estate affairs. So as long as I take that action, great. I get 2 VP, so that's beneficial. However, if I don't complete that compulsion, then I have to draw a maladjustment card, which means that I'm a terrible parent, because this doesn't affect me now, at least in Generation 1 and 2. No. Instead, I hold on to it, and in the next generation, my kids are born with a maladjustment. It's always negative, and it lasts through that entire generation. Generation 3 is a little different. If you go up this track, you get these maladjustments immediately because you're really just losing it from having, bad parents and grandparents, and so on and so on. You can also lose VP if you keep going up. You can lose workers. All kinds of bad things happen. You got a rotating market here of estates that changes every round. So you discard a couple, put some new ones in. Last little thing, some special tokens can be placed on the victory track or elsewhere, where it's, if a character reaches that, if you get that many points, then a story event happens in the narrative app, or it could be somewhere else. There are also these little star things. I don't remember what on earth that does. Events happen. There are moments for voting where you vote yay or nay in certain story events, like voting someone to be mayor or something like that. So you hold it in your hand and you hide it, and then you reveal yay or nay. And then the narrative takes you forward, and the people who said yay might get something, the people who said nay might not get something, or vice versa. All kinds of fun little things to interact with others. Let's go to the pros and the cons. The pros, the quality of these components are absolutely stunning and beautiful. I love the little glass potion things and the metal gears and the coins and all of that. The artwork is lovely. The miniatures, you can make your family whatever you want. They're all interchangeable. It's just the bases determine what they are, not so much the figures. So you can play whoever you want. It's easy to set up because it's got a game trays thing. I can set this up in 5 minutes. Not a big deal. I consider the app a pro in that it does kind of direct you through the game, somewhat like a tutorial, so it was pretty easy and quick to learn. But don't take that to mean it's a total like open and play. You still do need to read the rulebook, but it's a pretty easy read. Pros, also, of course, the theme. This thing is, I think I already said it, is just dripping with theme. I love the 3 different stories here. There's plenty of gameplay in them. You can replay them. No problem at all. It's just 3 completely different ways to play the game. Cons, where are you going to find the game? It's hard to find. This might even be a Grail game. But I'm covering it anyway because it's fantastic. And I want to see more games like this. The other thing is the cost. I'm actually going to have to check how much it costs, and I'll have to flash it on the screen here. Doesn't mean the game isn't worth that. It's just it limits who can get it. I got this because the box was damaged. I got it for like 50 bucks or something, or 60. And the final con is it doesn't have a solo mode. Not every game has to have it. However, I think with this game, even though there is interaction in the app with making choices and voting and things like that, it's not so much that you couldn't make, especially with the app, you could have an AI opponent, and oh my goodness, I would play the life out of this if I could play this one player. Please. So who's this game for? You don't have to be super competitive. Even though it is a competitive game, this isn't like confrontational. This is for friends that have a sense of humor and can understand a slightly dark sense of humor. You got to be able to play with others and accept the fact that others' actions are going to impact you, like with the mob marker. I love you all. I'll see you next time.